They're either sticking to him or stuck with him, but how much does it matter in Arkansas? More emails, more claims of conflict, even corruption, but is her rival letting it get through? Who gets to vote and who says so? Some confusion. The shale, the pipelines, the price. A pre-autumn update next on Arkansas Week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week. About 90 days and counting now to the general election. A lot of political news. Some of it touches on Arkansas. We'll try to get to all of it in the next few minutes. Hoyt Purvis joins us, an independent journalist based in Fayetteville. Wesley Brown, editor, columnist, reporter for for Talk Business. David Keith from the journalism staff at UCA. And thanks to everybody for coming in. Well, another eventful week in the presidential campaign. All of the controversy surrounding the Republican nominee, though, Wesley, does not seem to have thus far shaken, publicly anyway, any of the Arkansans who had been committed to Mr. Trump or who had vowed merely to support their party's presidential nominee. Still married.
I think there's, it's interesting you said 90 days. I said, wow, they're going to be stuck for 90 days. They selected him as their nominee. What can you do at this point? There's really not a lot you can't throw them to the curb. So they're going to have to be prepared for these issues. I guess the question is, will he be able to stick to his message, to be able to resonate with not just his base, but those that he's going to have to get into his column, independent voters, even some conservative Democrats over to his side. That's going to be the difficulty, over the next 90 days. But these controversies keep taking him off topic. He keeps I mean, there's at least 2 or 3 a week now.
It's been interesting. For example, look at Congressman Westerman from South Arkansas. He's been asked a number of times, how do you respond? He says he's very comfortable with Trump as a candidate, primarily because Trump will make Supreme Court nominations, or probably would, that he would agree with, and he thinks that in part. At the same time, he acknowledges that he's uncomfortable. While he's comfortable on the one hand, he's also uncomfortable about some of the things that, for example, some of the things that Mr. Trump has said with regard to nuclear weapons, and then more recently, the references he made to the second supporters of the Second Amendment and what they might do to Hillary Clinton, and Congressman Westerman acknowledged that probably was not an appropriate comment. So, but that sort of, in a sense, exemplifies what a lot of the Republicans are faced with, because on the one hand, and really the biggest, when it comes down to it, that it's that ability to make nominations to the Supreme Court that ranks very high with the comfort, giving a comfort level to some of the Republican supporters who are not real pleased with some of the sort of off-the-wall comments or other the whole questionable catalog of comments that Trump has made.
Well, to your point, I was at an event where it was a pipeline dedicated in North Little Rock, and Governor Hutchinson, both senators, Senator Bozeman, Senator Cotton, and Westerman was also there. And the reporters were there, and we knew we were going to ask that question about the Second Amendment. We were able to corner Hutchinson, and he said, and in his words, well, I can't get inside of Donald Trump's head.
No one can.
Yeah, but the other, Bozeman and Cotton, and Westerman all quietly crept away before we could get them to that. And I think what you're seeing is that people, candidates like Bozeman, they're tired of having to answer those questions. That,
Right. Yeah,
that come
I
up
think
every
as you're
time.
getting more and more. They're certainly tired of it, and they're going to get more tired of it.
Yeah.
They're going to, avoid
90
it.
days remaining.
90 days, yeah. I was kind of like Wesley when you said that. I said, wow, that's a lot to have to persevere through. And I think what you may see, though, is they're just going to maybe turn the other way in the sense, not in the sense of not supporting Trump, but be more critical of Clinton. I think, maybe the tact is I can't really come out and vocally support Trump because of so many things that he has done, so I'll just attack Hillary Clinton.
Well,
that could be an approach that we see more. And I think also you may see them, maybe they just shy away from that and start talking about congressional races or state legislative races, or maybe trying to put the focus more on those down ballot races as well, and building up those Republican candidates, so that if Donald Trump does become this scourge that loses the election, that doesn't cost the Republican Party everything, and so putting more and more emphasis on those other races.
Well, you saw the senator from Maine,
Ms. Collins?
Yeah, what she did, she basically came out and said, I can't support Donald Trump, but then she went and said, I won't vote for Hillary. So that, that kind of gives her, some space there. She's but I think you're going to see more of that. I think you're going to see more of the. And I don't even think she's running, but you're going to see more candidates, more people, important people in the Republican Party make those kind of statements.
Hoyt, do you see the possibility of a Susan Collins moment in Arkansas?
In Arkansas, no, I don't. Not thus far. I mean, it's clear there are several things to be said. One, as we've been discussing, even some very strong Republican leaders are not comfortable with the things that Trump has been saying, some of those things. But the reality is that there's every indication that Trump still is very, very strong with the Arkansas voters. Now, having said that, there is clearly a core of Hillary Clinton supporters in Arkansas. We're going to have a campaign headquarters in Arkansas, which it's going to be interesting to see how much business they do. But I think clearly there is that core group of supporters of Hillary Clinton that are going to stick with her regardless. But if you step back and look at the bigger statewide picture, it's hard to see much evidence of significant movement in Clinton's direction.
Because I think a core group that supports Hillary Clinton in Arkansas, there's a larger core group that supports Donald Trump. And a lot of what he says, even as public officials try to distance themselves from it, there's a large percentage of the population that says, that's why we like Donald Trump.
That's red meat. Even though you have some party leaders cringing every time he says something, there are people who the whole issue of the president being aligned with Muslims or ISIS, that has resonated.
Founding ISIS.
But they're not founding. That of course, sort of one of the things that we're indirectly referring to is the fact that if Trump continues to make these kinds of comments, which then sort of put him on the defensive, that draws attention away from what many of the Republican strategists want to be happening, and that is, as you referred to earlier, David, to being able to attack Clinton and to keep the focus on that. But that's hard to do when Mr. Trump keeps making these, in some cases, outlandish statements, even though people may agree with some of them.
Right, and Trump's, it appears his philosophy is he's kind of one-man band or whatever. He doesn't care about, to a large degree, doesn't care about party support.
He's a loose cannon.
Right. Yeah. You look at it, it could be phrased that way, but his approach is this message resonates with the people who vote, and on election day, no matter if you're Asa Hutchinson or Tom Cotton or Joe the plumber, you got one vote.
Yeah, and the thing that we may see, will he be able to get voters out to the polls who that message resonates with, similar to how President Obama was able to get blacks that hadn't voted in decades out to the polls, and if he gets that effect, then we're going to say he's a genius.
The other side of that is the people who are offended or put off by his message. Is he going to get more of those numbers out? Is he going to get more Hispanics, more women, more of these other groups out to vote than have voted in the past as well? And they're not voting for him.
Right.
Well, let us savage Mrs. Clinton for a moment, if we can. There continue to be more emails, more questions. There is a bit of murk about the Clinton Foundation and her time at the State Department, or I won't say, what's the right word? Confusing, anyway, at a minimum. Stuff that another nominee might be able to really make hay on it, and Mr. Trump's surrogates, or at least GOP activists, are trying, and it can't get through. Every time something comes up that might cast a spell or a shadow over the Clinton candidacy, it gets smothered by Mr. Trump's latest.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no doubt that there's this cloud, or whatever you want, over Hillary Clinton, particularly anything related to the internet or
the
emails or whatever. That continues, and that seems to not be something that's going to fade away, because it continues to be out there. But it gets relatively little attention because of the sort of flamboyant nature, if you want to call it that, of Trump, and some of the things that he says, which are in some cases just patently false and insulting, really, to the public. But at the same time, he seems determined to pursue the course of the strategy that he thinks is important, and to say whatever he wants to say, regardless of how that's going to tilt against him in terms of the attention that remains focused on him.
But one thing that remains, Hillary Clinton's negatives are almost as high as Donald Trump's, and in a normal campaign, you would have opposition research people going through those emails, finding information. Her conversations with, she doesn't have a great relationship with black voters the way Bill Clinton had. So, there are lots of things out there that if you had just a back and forth between two primary candidates that are doing opposition research, you would see some things. But as you said, Hart, there is no focus on Hillary.
What do we know about the latest batch, and they involve the relationship between the state, with Mrs. Clinton as the nexus, relationship between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department? Those would appear to be legitimate questions.
Right, and certainly I don't pretend to be an expert on the content of all those messages, but what we see and what's involved again in this latest round of stories having to do with the Clinton Foundation it's a matter of appearance. It raises questions about the sort of inside favoritism and contacts and however you want to put it. And even if there's...
And we should add, for fairness, personal profit, because there have been allegations that the foundation was used, if not to directly subsidize the Clintons, then to bring about favors from those who did.
Yeah, similar in the business, insider trading. You're getting favors or because of information they had. Her position as Secretary of State, and Clinton, the foundation is gaining from those connections. Which if you, like you said, if you look at those, those are things that should be talked about. As is this illegal, or have they crossed the line in
Right,
terms
or
of,
just
their influence.
Yeah, and well, I was going to say, I mean, I think in most of what we know about, it's not really a question of legality, but it is a question of
appearance.
of the
Appearance or ethics.
appearance, ethical behavior, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we had the unusual situation of the presidential candidate, or was the Secretary of State and a former First Lady. I mean, so just the whole construction is a little bit different, and that's if the Democrats. I mean, Hillary Clinton was the leader coming into the primary. She won it, and all of this, but you wonder if, as much as Donald Trump is imploding, if another Democrat had somehow won the nomination. Martin O'Malley came out of nowhere,
And went back to nowhere.
Right, went back to nowhere. But, if someone who didn't have all the baggage on the front end of Hillary Clinton had won the nomination, this may have been the most snooze fest presidential election we'd ever
I
seen.
tuned in deliberately yesterday to let's say an arch conservative radio station that targets a niche, but it's a fairly big niche of Arkansas listeners, and I heard the Clinton body count from 20 years ago being revived again thoroughly, and yet as of I think last evening, Mr. Silver's electoral vote count had Mrs. Clinton plunging down to approximately 350 electoral votes. Just not going anywhere.
Well, and again, I think, and part of it goes back to what Hoyt was saying, is that, and you said as well, that anytime there seems to be something, say the emails or whatever, it can't get traction because Donald Trump has done or said something else. And there's you read about how many millions of dollars in free coverage Trump has gotten from the media and continues to receive, and time spent that the media are focusing on Trump, they're not focusing on Clinton.
And related to this, I think it seems to me that there's a real weariness with the whole Clinton and a lot, people, I think they've made up their minds pretty much about the Clinton emails and appearances and interconnections and all those things. And I think that's part of the reason why, because I mean, compared to the circus that that Trump is heading up, he's the drum major or whatever you want to call him, and I think so. I think unless something really truly spectacular and new emerged from all the emails and the private server and all those kinds of things, I don't think that's going to cause a great shift in the electorate at this point.
Moving on, and that's who gets to vote in Arkansas. There's been some confusion over the past week, some of it arising from the Secretary of State's office. So,
that's. I think the state newspaper, there was a story this morning that finally the Secretary of State has responded to some concerns from the county level officials, county clerks, of what to do with whether they're going to purge their rolls of the voters that are as you said, the felons that are. So there's just still a lot of confusion, and I think that the travesty of it is, if one person is not allowed to vote that should vote, that whole issue is, and it's going to take place on the day of the election. They won't know until that very day.
It is a confusing mess, and it's what's involved here is that some felons who have now should regain the right to vote have not necessarily been enfranchised, I guess you could say. On the other hand, there's some people who shouldn't have been dropped from the voter rolls, who are in danger of being disenfranchised, and that's a serious business. And you would have to, I would have to say that it does not appear to have been something that's been handled with great efficiency and dispatch. And there have been, FOI requests, Freedom of Information requests, and other things that have sort of begun to uncover what's going on here. And frankly, it appears that the Secretary of State's office has for a good bit of time, has stonewalled kind of on this issue and refused to respond to requests. And finally, I think sort of a signal coming from the Attorney General's office suggested maybe they ought to be a little more forthcoming.
Because and there's a couple of issues here. One is, and the core issue is these the 7,700 people on this list. Basically, the Secretary of State's office merged its voter roll with the Arkansas Crime Information Center felons list, and everything that matched up, they sent it out to the county clerks and said, these people are convicted felons. Well, it turned out they weren't all, some of them weren't even convicted felons. Some of them, had their records expunged or whatever, which gave them the right to vote, and some of them were convicted felons and should not vote. I think the problem with the Secretary of State's office was they didn't have everything in order before they sent out the first letter. And now they've kind of come back, and they've put the onus on the county clerks to determine, are these people eligible to vote? And the county clerks are the ones who keep the voting records in this state, and it probably does fall to them, but they should have had more direction on the front end that you need to verify this, because it kind of came out as these people need to come off the rolls. And some county clerks did verification, some apparently did not, just threw everybody off, and I think some of them may not have even really dealt with it yet. And so it does create confusion, and like Wesley said, if people who are eligible to vote are not given that opportunity on election day, that's certainly a problem. But on the other hand, if people are not eligible to vote, they don't need to be voting.
Right.
Yeah. Got some stuff still to do. Dr. Energy, bring us up to date.
Well, we've got a lot of things going on. As I mentioned, the Governor Hutchinson dedicated a huge pipeline that will, from Fort Smith to Little Rock, about 220 miles, that will bring refined petroleum products, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel for the U.S. Air Force Base. But what this will have, the good thing about this is that it will bring more refined products into the state's largest market, and maybe even lower prices of gasoline. We asked Governor Hutchinson that, and he wouldn't hedge his bets that we'll see lower prices, but he said he do believe we'll see more competition. And right now we're in a sweet spot in terms of gasoline prices. Gasoline prices in Arkansas is one of the 8 states in the United States who have gas prices. Almost every location in Arkansas is under $2 a gallon, and that will probably remain until Labor Day, when you'll start to see them go back up. And then after Labor, they'll go back down. So we are in a sweet spot, and I think we're probably going to be in that sweet spot for several years because of the levels of crude oil being produced in the United States and the access to cheaper fuels, and so it's a good thing for Arkansas. I drove up here and was able to fill up for like $25, so that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, we should ask, of course, how many gallons you're taking. All right, what about the shale? Give us
what's taking place in the shale? Southwestern Energy recently announced that they're going to, they laid at the beginning of the year, they laid off basically all of their workers in the field. Took all their rigs offline. They said they're going to expend about $70 million in the second half of this year, which will bring, they were that's compared to $1 billion that they were spending in the shale about 5 or 6 years ago. But what this will do will rehire a few workers to come back and may signal that the shale will start to produce again and be able to produce a little bit more. But you won't see us go back to those levels unless you see the price of natural gas go back up over $3. It's still below about $2.70 right now, and it's going to take a while. We're producing a lot of energy in the United States. So.
Yeah. Well, the key is demand, I guess, Wesley, and it's just fallen post 2008 anyway, or in the last couple 3 years.
Yeah, and the fact that even with you would think with natural gas below $3 that producers would stop drilling, would stop producing. They still have wells that they've drilled, so they're still producing out there. Well, they have to, like Southwestern because they have to have some cash flow. If they don't have cash flow, they can't pay their debt. So it's kind of, they're caught in a catch-22 situation. They have to keep producing at some level. But one of the things we're starting to see is a market overseas for our natural gas, liquid natural gas, and that's a market that we may see to ease some of that demand issue that you're talking about.
Okay, got to end it there because we're out of time. Guys, thanks to you for coming in. As always, thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.